Before we start the tutorial, I wanted to take a few seconds and mention that if you want to learn on how to use the landscape system within UDK, you may want to check out UDK Landscape How to Guide to Landscape Creation. You can find out more at worldofleveldesign.com/guides and just click over to the UDK tab. Alright, now on to the tutorial. In this tutorial, you're going to learn how to create height maps using Photoshop and Clouds filter. You will then export these height maps and then import them into UDK so you can use them as a way to create your landscapes. This is a good start to have a terrain, a landscape going inside your map without having to manually modify and form everything yourself. So let's begin. First step is inside Photoshop. We need to generate our height map. So let's go to File, New, and we need to set our width and height. Now to start things off, we're going to use the power of two values. These values are 128 by 128, 256 by 256, 512 by 512, 1024, 2048, and 4096. These are the base power of two values. And in order to know which one you want to use to start with, you need to take a look at UDK Landscape recommended sizes. So Epic has a chart that recommends specific sizes for your landscape. Under overall sizes, you have these values: 4033, 2017, 1009, and so on, going all the way down to 127 by 127. These are UDK landscape sizes. And this is going to be our final pixel size for the height map inside Photoshop when we save our height map. And to keep things simple, inside Photoshop, we're going to use power of two values and then size it down to the width and the height that UDK understands. So looking at the UDK landscape chart, I'm going to use 509 by 509 overall size in vertices. This is the landscape that I want. So the power of two value in Photoshop, I'm going to set it to 512. You can use 509, that's fine, but I like to keep things organized and start with the base values that game engine can use and then sample it down specifically for UDK later. So once you set the width and the height, we want to choose grayscale and set it to 16-bit and click OK. Next, we need to make sure that our foreground and our background is set to black and white. So right here on the bottom, on the left hand side, set your background and your foreground to black and white, or you can hit D on the keyboard to reset it. Now with our image open, let's go to Filter, Render, and choose Clouds. So this gives us a base height map. The whites of our image of the height map are the peaks, and the blacks are the valleys or the lower points of the landscape. Let's hit Ctrl F to repeat the Clouds filter a couple of times and see what kind of effect that we can generate. Maybe there's something better. Now this is too many peaks and not enough lower points. So press Ctrl L for levels, and you can tweak the levels by using these gizmos and tighten your height map. So we're not going to mess around too much with the white, but we want to make sure that we have a little bit more blacks and something in the middle. So something like this. So now we have some mountain peaks here and we have some lower points here. So let's click OK. So now we have our first height map. So before we save, I'm going to show you another technique to generate a little bit different height map variation that may be better than just using the Clouds filter and then adjusting the levels. So let's go ahead, File, New, use the same properties, 512 by 512, grayscale, and 16-bit. Click OK. So let's go ahead, Filter, Render, Clouds, and then come back up to Filter, Render, Difference Clouds. And then let's hit Ctrl F to see what kind of other effect that we can generate that's a little bit better. This is pretty interesting. We have a lot of peaks here and we have a lot of valleys. This could be some rivers, maybe roads. So all the blacks are the lowest points that we can use for where the character is going to walk around in. So this is very interesting. So we're going to keep this and we're going to save both of these images and then we're going to try both to see which one works better. So you have two methods, two techniques that you can use to generate interesting height maps. Using the clouds and adjusting levels, and then using clouds and then using difference clouds. So before we save these images, we need to resize them down to 509 by 509 or another smaller landscape size that works with UDK. So under recommended landscape sizes, we're going to use 509 by 509. But you can also use and downsample to any of the lower sizes. You don't want to scale your height map that you're working on up. You always want to scale it down. So let's go ahead and switch over to the first image. Go to Image, Image Size, and we're going to switch width and height to 509. And under the drop-down menu of Resample Image, we want to choose Nearest Neighbor, Preserve Hard Edges. Let's go ahead and click OK. And let's do the same thing for this, for the second image. Image, Image Size, 509, drop down menu under Resample Image and switch to Nearest Neighbor. And click OK. Now let's switch over to the first and let's go ahead and save. Go to File, Save As. We want to use the drop down menu and choose Photoshop Raw. I already have a couple of height maps here, so we're going to ignore these. Let's name ours as Heightmap dash clouds for regular clouds. Let's go ahead and save. Under byte order, switch to Macintosh or IBM PC. I'm using PC, so I'm going to switch to IBM PC. Under header, make sure this is set to 0 and click OK. The warning dialog will come up. Just go ahead and ignore this and click OK. Let's switch over to the second image. Go to File, Save As, and you can save these height maps under any directory on your computer. You can save it inside the UDK structure directory, or you can save it in your documents folder. It doesn't really matter. When we use UDK, we'll import them from the saved location. So let's go ahead and switch under format to Photoshop Raw. And the second image is going to be called Heightmap-D for different clouds. And let's go ahead and save. Byte order, IBM PC, header 0, click OK, and click OK. So now we've generated two different height maps using two different techniques, and let's go ahead and import them into UDK and make them work as our landscape. Now in UDK, we're going to use an existing template and import our height map. So let's go ahead and select our ground plane and delete it. Now let's open the landscape mode, and under height map import, let's go ahead and import our first height map. You want to navigate into the folder where you saved your height map, and let's go ahead and double click on the first one, on height map clouds. The height map size will be automatically defined, and under format we want to check unsigned and PC. And now let's hit create landscape, and here's our landscape. Now the draw scale for the z-axis is out of control, so we need to fix this. So let's go ahead, close our landscape edit mode, and we want to double click on the landscape to open up the landscape properties. And you want to open up display, draw scale 3D, and we want to change the Z value from 256 to something more manageable. So let's go ahead and change, let's try 128. And we want a little bit more. Let's do 64. And that's a little bit better. And let's go ahead and do maybe 32. And now let's navigate. Let's go ahead and close this window. Let's get a little close into the flat area. Let's hide our fog for a second so we can see it better. And now we have our landscape imported from Photoshop. And with a little bit of additional work, this could be really good. This is a good starting point. Now we can go ahead and see how large this landscape is. Let's go ahead and insert a skeletal mesh reference. Select one of these and drag them right into the level. And now we can use the landscape mode and all the tools to refine and make this height map a lot better. Now let's go ahead and delete our character reference. Let's pull back. Let's go ahead, select our landscape and delete. Let's import our second height map. Let's select height map D clouds for difference. The height map size will be automatically input for us. Unsigned under format, PC, and create landscape. Let's go ahead back to camera mode. Double click under draw scale Z. Let's modify this to 64. And this is a lot, so let's go ahead and do 32. And this is a little bit better. Now we don't have any flat areas, flat planes, and we can do 16, but this will just destroy our height variation unless this is the landscape you want. But there's a lot of noise in this landscape, and I like the 32 for high difference. Now the difference clouds, we didn't do any level adjustments, so let's go ahead and delete this landscape for a second. Let's come back to Photoshop and let's tweak our levels on the second difference clouds filter. I'm going to create more blacks so there's flat areas and a little bit less gray noise scale variation. So let's go ahead and click OK. Let's go to File, Save As, Photoshop Raw. Let's override our Heightmap G-Clouds. IBC, header, yes, yes, and OK. Let's jump back to UDK, Landscape, Unsigned, PC, let's import, and let's go ahead and choose Heightmap G-Clouds. Everything's good, create landscape. Double click, and let's change this to 64, 32. Here we go. Let's close this, and this is a lot better. Now we have some flat areas that we can work with, and we can use the landscape menu and continue to refine and smooth out some of these rough edges. But we have a base to start with that we didn't have to manually create, and it was created for us. Now our last step for this tutorial, I want to see how large this landscape actually is. Let's go ahead and input our character reference scale. So I hope this tutorial was helpful. Please subscribe, like, share this video, and thank you for watching.